people, they don't see that. They don't look at it that way. They don't view it like that because they have never lost true freedom.
Right.
They've never been in the shoe, and every time you come out of your cell, you're handcuffed and you're in a triangle formation with three COs, and they all carrying batons. One of them has to be a sergeant. They've never had to walk down a rotunda and hear dead man walking.
Right.
They've never had to sit there and watch somebody slaughtered.
Right.
They've never had to fight in a cell for their life. And it's like, how do you not lose hope in a place like that? There's a lot to each person's journey that another person doesn't necessarily know.
Today we have Michael Mosely on the channel, and out of all the movies in the world, you say that the one of the movies that relates to his lived experiences is Shawshank Redemption, one of the greatest classics of all time. So for the world that don't know, how does this movie relate to your life?
The movie, the grand scope of the movie is just about hope. And, I know your viewers don't know, but I did 14 years in prison. We were cellies, we've been there. And one thing that always carried me through was hope. And it didn't matter when I lost family, when, the yard went down or I was in a shoe, whatever. I never lost hope. And I always just felt like I had no choice but to persevere. And I did. And I stuck to it and I maintained my program. And, I was able to parole and get off parole. And even now, I still don't lose hope, man.
Right. All right. So, and for the world that ain't seen this movie, whoever's living under a rock, Shawshank Redemption is about a character named Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins. And Andy was a banker prior to prison, and he was falsely accused of murdering his wife and her lover in the midst of her committing adultery. So, and with that false accusation came 2 life sentences. Traditional American fashion, they believe that if you die and come back, you're still going to be serving time. So that tossed him into a world completely unknown to him, prison. And when it opens up, for you and me, that shit looked just like old Folsom. So that's what it reminded me
Basically,
of as soon as he went up in there. So, and he was
basically,
in this world to where it was pure corruption. But the way the story was told, it also showed the beautiful aspects that come out of struggle too, that your mind forces you to find because you're looking for that peace. You're looking for any little thing that can take you out of the conditions you're actually in. So with all the dynamics that was going on in prison amongst inmates, amongst correctional officers, like what parts do your life relate to?
it's the it's the violence. Um, you see it every day, all the time, and it really desensitizes you because I believe we had this conversation one day where there was a guy over there getting stabbed, and I think if I remember correctly, it was me, you, and maybe a couple of other guys. And the first thing I thought about, and I even mentioned it, was, oh, he messed up. Not somebody's got to call his mom. Not his family's going to be worried. None of that. So, and it's like, how do you not lose hope in a place like that? And you just have to figure it out. And it's hard to imagine spending a decade and a half in a place where violence is the only thing that's really respected. I look at some of the characters in the movie, like the old man, Birdman. He wound up killing himself after all this time in prison. And he reminded me of a dude when I was in Pelican Bay named Zuzu. Zuzu had an A number when I met him in 2008-ish.
Right,
That man had been down close to 60 years.
right,
And then I was talking to the older homie Molo the other day. He said he got out. What does this man do with his life?
right.
It's like, how do you get to a point where even hope is not enough?
Right.
And I saw the curve when I came home. The first time I touched a smartphone was 2013. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't get out till 2020, and
Right.
I had a little bit of an understanding, but I was lost,
Right.
and I had to find somebody that could help me figure out how to do emails, compose emails, send emails, how to add attachments, and all these things. In the world had just progressed so far past me, and I literally was dejected at times, and I didn't know what to do, and I really felt like that guy, and I just and I, not the aspect where I was like, oh, I'm gonna kill myself, but just out of place.
What's surrounding the circumstances of your crime? What did you ultimately get convicted of? And how much time did you do?
My ultimate conviction was for assault with a firearm, gang related crime. I shot a guy in defense of a so-called homie, turned around, told on me, blah blah blah. Same old story that we all have, right? I was sentenced to 10 with 85. But immediately upon going to Old Folsom, I encountered a CO that was he was not really a nice dude. And I still carried that street mentality. And I wasn't thinking big picture. And we wound up getting in an argument. And I wound up socking him up, and I knocked him out in one block chow hall in Old Folsom. And that just led me on a path where like I was stuck. And it was level 4 living after that. It was the shoe and all of that. And they added 6 more years to my sentence, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And from there was attempted murder on one of the homies. It was a bribery of an officer. It was multiple different things. And I wound up being sentenced to a total of 16 years because of college and the milestone programs and whatnot. I wound up doing 14 years, 3 days.
All right.
And it took me 2 years to get off parole. And now I'm a free man. I'm a father. I'm a homeowner. I, I just, I hustle and I go hard, and I live a good life, and I earned it, but
Right.
it was hard. It was
Right.
hard. I see you from a distance, bro, and I'm proud as hell. And I only can relate to your struggle a little bit because we did almost the same amount of time.
Right.
And now we're out here being successful and we're living a life. But there's a lot to each person's journey that another person doesn't necessarily know. And that's the hard part where you like you can't lose hope. You have to
Right.
maintain that faith, that self-perseverance.
Right. And a lot of times it takes us, and like you're doing right now, telling your story to give people hope, because a lot of people grow up feeling like don't nobody understand. Can't nobody understand what it's like to walk in my shoes until you actually hear somebody be like, damn, he kind of went through what I went through. And the fact that he's able to translate it better than you can, he can have the answers to all the questions that you had just by how he overcame it. So that's why one of the reasons why this platform is so important. And going back to the dots you just connected, you know what I'm saying, as people was listening, at some point it got darker for you before it got lighter. You know what I'm saying? So with
Absolutely.
yeah, so with Andy Dufresne, you remember the statement he made in there that when he was on the streets, he was an honest man, straight as an arrow. He had to come to prison to become a crook. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like he got put in a position to where you had to get your hands a little dirty in order to make a better way for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Now,
yeah.
even though that isn't spot on what you went through, just the fact that going through that circumstances, he got a little darker. Did that happen for you?
Oh, absolutely. Like I just mentioned, where like I caught attempted murder on one of the homies, and he was just he was doing what he was doing, and an example needed to be made. And I turned to two other younger homies and I said, "Watch, I'm going to show you why what I've been telling you. You got to pay attention." And what happened happened, and I personally was at a dark place because my mom was really sick. Just things weren't going well at with my sister, and I had money issues and stuff like that. And I just was trying to maintain that smile. You already
Right,
know every time I came out to sell, bro, I had a smile on my face.
right,
And I tried to respect people's positions and I tried to interact with every individual I could, whether they were northerner, southerner, border brother, Uso, white, whatever. I tried to interact with everybody on a respectful, even plane because I knew once that respect is gone and you're one of those men that don't care, a man that don't care is a dangerous man, most dangerous man in the world because he'll
right,
go do anything. He'll go do anything and jeopardize your safety.
right,
And I knew I couldn't get to that point. And it got close because, like I said, I just had so much going on and
right,
I was feeling some type of way and things weren't adding up the way I wanted them to. And there were a lot of situations on the yard that I felt really unjust about. And guys were doing things that they for sure shouldn't have. And I mean from a political standpoint with us,
right,
not, everybody's doing something they shouldn't do according to the COs, but with us, they were doing stuff they shouldn't do. And it was causing strife and it was causing just misdirection everywhere. And it was all just a couple guys just basically trying to get high. So I truly felt like I was on an island. And it was 15 dudes from the car on the yard. And I really, really had to kind of like step back. And one of the homies, Kirk Lee, young Budo, he came to me and he was like, Mike, I see it. What's going on? You're not yourself. You haven't come out your cell and smiled in a week or two. You're not very talkative. Like you're one of those dudes. When you get quiet, I get concerned. Like because something's going on. And I just explained to him how I was feeling and what was going on. Like I said, I just was getting to that dark place where it was hard. And I was realizing like prison was hard. Up to that point, like I had that eggshell stuff when I first came in, and one of the homies, he gave me some words of wisdom that I never have ever forgotten. And he said, thankfully he got out, but he told me, he said, you stay here. I live here. Because he had life without at the time. And it just made sense. When I first came in, I heard that. And I was like, man, I came with 10 years for 85%. I'm going home in 8 years. The homie been down 21 years and he's got the rest of his life to go. And so that carried me for the longest. And I like took that to heart. I embodied that. And it carried me for the longest. But at some point, and I don't know what the switch was that kind of just brought me down, but it did. And it's crazy because there was nothing I could do to bring myself out of that. And no books I read, no family I talked to, nothing and I would constantly try to reassure myself and all these things. And finally it took one of the homies, a true homie to reach out and be like, hey, what's going on with you? And I think that kind of reinvigorated my hope.
right. Because we touched on the darkest moments, but like if you can be more specific and descriptive, what was that 12 o'clock hour for you?
When my mom passed away.
Mm. While you was in prison?
Uh, yeah.
All
That was
right,
before I came over there. That was before I came over there with you guys on Dior.
right.
Um, yeah, my mom passed away. She was gone for 9 days.
Mm.
And my family was calling and calling and calling. The prison wasn't delivering the message. Finally, my counselor comes up to the door, knocks on my door, say, hey, come to my office tomorrow. You got a phone call. I'm like, what? Like, yeah, you got a phone call. Your mom passed away. Well, she said your mom died. And I just remember my heart fell.
Mm.
And it was the way it was done. Like, there was no compassion, none. And I knew that if I didn't get right myself, I was done. I was done. And I just started reading again and I started just getting back into college. And it took me 9 years to stay out of trouble, but my last five, that college really did it.
Right, right,
The college really, really did it. And it gave me such a sense of gratitude and such a sense of hope. And then I became a college tutor. And you already know I went down that path full force.
right.
And that I truly believe being a college tutor and getting out and seeing other guys, helping guys get their high school diplomas, helping guys graduate through their semesters, and some guys actually getting their degree. I truly believe that helped save me.
Right.
Because
And
after my mom passed, I got to that point where I was done.
right, right. Man, that's powerful. And you did 14 years and you brought up old man Brooks. Dudes like him and the other guy you said been down 60. Like, people need to understand, like, this is beyond fiction. We know these people. You know what I'm saying? That what Brooks was going through is just like what Red said in the movie. He said these walls are funny. First you hate them, then you become used to them, and after a while you start depending on them. People don't understand that's a real thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, after being down so long, your mind becomes programmed and you become complacent. And being down half a century, come on now, all your family done died off, the family that you knew, everything you knew about the outside world, that's completely gone. It's like a complete time lapse. Everything is completely different. So it's like
Yeah.
everything is different to where you have spent 50 years trying to build up just an ounce of decency and became so used to this stuff that now when it's time, when they release you, he tried to kill his own friend just to stay in here. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's deep. Like, and though you have not went to that extreme, let's talk about certain ticks that you then brought with you out of prison into the real world. Like, what types of programming you brought with you that you had to catch yourself when you first got out?
So I will say this: institutionalization is real. 100% is real. They say if you've been down 10 years or more, you're institutionalized. I refuse to own that title, and I did everything I could to avoid that. But it took me over a year to be able to walk out of my house with slides on,
Mm,
without the first thought hitting my mind: how am I going to defend myself? How am I going to attack somebody if I have to?
right,
That is not a normal thought. That's a thought we have because we're used to boots laced when the doors pop.
right,
We're not used to walking around in shower. We call them, I still want to call them shower shoes, but
right,
slides, right? We're not used to that. So it took me all this time. And I started doing anger management with a friend of mine, and I used to always talk about it. And it kind of hurt a little bit because I had to come to a realization: all the training I did, everything I thought about, all the hope I've given into my life, and everything I did not to be institutionalized, on some level I was.
exactly,
Not that I couldn't function without structure, because I can function without structure, but there were still little microcosms that got to me. And
exactly,
the thing about the slides was one.
right,
And it was a funny thing when it finally went away, because he asked, matter of fact, he asked me, we had breakfast a couple weeks ago, and he asked me, say, hey, when's the last time you walked out your house with slides on? I said, man, last week. He said, what'd you think about? I said, nothing. And I smiled because I realized, like, it's been a while. And that's not the thought that came to my mind. Was, how am I going to defend myself? How am I going to attack somebody with what I'm wearing? And I really, really felt proud of myself. I really
right,
felt the self-love on that one, because I persevered and I kept my hope, and I found normalcy without the institutionalized thoughts.
right. That's good. And with Andy, going back to Andy, man, it's like he did his best to maintain himself while in there. And that's easier said than done because you can go in there and a lot of people lose themselves. Like, so he fought his hardest to maintain the sense of self in who he was, though he still was kind of like, once again, like you said, he came to prison, became a crook. So you can't fight everything, but for the most part, he kept that vision, which kept him with that hope, though. You know what I'm saying? He was able to think outside the box, which allowed him to make it outside that box. For me, I did a lot of stuff that was outside of the norms of the yards I was on. You know what I'm saying? When I was investing in stock, 99.9% people on the yard were just still worried about getting the next grant. You know what I'm saying? I was building my credit. I was, you know what I'm saying? I was calling mastermind groups to the law library. I was doing all types of the stuff we done built on in the cell conversations that were just completely outside of that norm, which everything contributed to me slicing my entire sentence in half. All of that contributed to that. So me
Yeah.
thinking outside the box helped me make it outside that box. So what was some of the things that you was doing throughout your term that allowed you to do that?
The milestone program with the college really, really helped. I knocked off almost 2 years off my sentence. And when I went home, I still had 58 weeks
Mm,
that I could not use that I had earned.
mm,
So that really, really helped.
right,
Um, and I never stopped reading books. I probably read over 3,000 books.
right.
And one of the greatest books I read was The Art of Love by Eric Fromm.
Mm,
And I remember when I was done with that book, you couldn't read it. There were so many notes in the margins, and I had deconstructed the book and just I had paragraphs deconstructed and summarized on page 2 and had them relating to notes and summarizations of paragraphs on page 104. Like the book was almost like a schizophrenic picture, right?
right,
But it made sense to me, and it really, really opened my eyes to self-worth and self-love. And that was like the last catalyst I needed to
right,
just propel me into stardom.
right,
And after that, I was ready, and I knew that was the trigger for me, that I knew I didn't want to go home, but I was ready to go home.
exactly. And
And
that's
I,
what,
and I think people, not to cut you off, I think people don't realize that.
right,
I never forget. I was listening to a song by Lil Baby, and I told myself, I'm gonna be flying down the freeway in a coupe listening to this. And here it was, 6 months after I got out. I had, I had a Jaguar, and I was flying down the freeway at like 100 and something. The song came on, and a thought popped in my head. And I said, man, you manifested your destiny on this.
right,
And it
right,
was something small, but it meant everything.
right. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Because a year before that, I was still up there at High Desert
Right.
in the thick of it,
Where anything
mad.
happens.
Oh man.
That,
Oh,
that's
anything
that's
could
a whole
happen.
nother conversation. But so
Oh,
but just to talk about, you know what I'm saying? Because as you're talking, I'm thinking about the relationship dynamics. It's like the way we was building together, Andy and Red, they benefited each other. Even though Red was still, he didn't find hope until the very end. Still, though, he was able to bring something to Andy's table, and Andy was able to bring something to his table in their friendship. You know what I'm saying? And it's like the best bonds are forged in fire at the same time. When you go through the struggle with somebody, when you in the war with somebody, when you go through hardship with somebody, like those build the best relationships. You know what I'm saying? Even though you wouldn't want to go through that, but still though, it's just like going through that, that's what builds the tightest bonds. And when somebody you built that bond with gets out, it's like it means the world to you to live through their eyes now. You know what I'm saying? So when
yes.
Andy got out, or when even Old Man Brooks, when they were still writing letters back to the pen, like people live for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh,
Yeah.
what you doing? What is it like out there? Woo, woo. So in today's time, in the real world, I'm locked into like 30 tablets right now. And just
Oh
being
yeah.
able to send pictures to people, send videos to people, money, stuff like that, that means more than the money at times. You know what I'm saying? Because they want to see you win, and they proud that you out there representing them the way you're supposed to. Because people that's out here bullshitting, there's people back there that'll get their right hand to be in your position. You know what I'm saying?
Man,
So just touch on
man.
that real quick, since you've been out, the people that you done reach back to, and what that means.
So I love reaching back. And I sent the guys always asking me for pictures. First, they wanted pictures of my house, my cars, and all that stuff. Then I had a daughter, and they all want pictures of the baby girl, and they wanted pictures of me just working and just seeing that life. And for instance, the homie Molo, I just talked to him. He called me like 9 times straight last Saturday, and we just chopped it up and had a good conversation. He just got out back out the hole, and he's in Pelican Bay again, and it's just misery. And I just like, you know what, bro? I'm doing nothing right now. I'm doing nothing. I'm waiting on these UFC fights to start, waiting on this pizza to come. I'm chilling with baby girl. Go ahead and ring that line. He called back like 9 times.
Right.
And for instance, my old Mosely Ace, old Pinky, the one little brother you got into
Right.
it with. He just called me a couple times a day.
Right.
And I always call and I talk to his mom, and it's just I talk to all these guys. Scooby, he going back to the port, bro. I like you said, like 30 tablets. I I just have I forget sometimes, and I have to go in there and be like, oh man, I forgot to deliver this message, forgot to send these pictures, forgot to do this, I forgot to do that, and I'm always just locked in with the homies and talking to them, and even other guys that I just built bonds with. You know what I mean? And it is it's truly a blessing to be able to give them some type of hope. I truly understand what it means to respect my freedom. And I think people, they don't see that. They don't look at it that way. They don't view it like that because they have never lost true freedom.
Right.
They've never been in the shoe, and every time you come out of your cell, you're handcuffed and you're in a triangle formation with three COs, and they all carrying batons. One of them has to be a sergeant. They've never had to walk down a rotunda and hear dead man walking.
Right.
They've never had to sit there and watch somebody slaughtered.
Right.
They've never had to fight in a cell for their life. My
Right.
first shoe, they didn't come around for the welfare checks every 15 minutes like they do now. You got into a fight with your cellie, you literally fought.
Right.
And somebody probably was going to be on the verge of not being here anymore.
Right.
And I've seen horrendous things that I look at it now and I'm like, how did I not lose hope?
What else would you say is an underlying theme throughout the whole movie, a universal theme?
I think it's friendship,
All right.
because nobody can do it alone. Like we always have a saying, right? Nobody's bigger than the car, right? But I think it's friendship because I'm sure there's one or two guys you can think back on through your whole time, right? And just like me, you did a decade and a half, that this person helped you, whether they know it or not, they helped you in a positive manner get through some tough stuff. Some stuff where you almost just threw your hands up and was like, whatever, let's do it. But whatever way they interacted with you on a consistent basis, it kept you level. It kept you going. And so for me, it's friendship.
All right.
Friendship, because without that friendship, nobody's an island. Like, what are you gonna do as an island? Islands don't work in prison. We see
Right.
it all the time. How many times we seen guys come in talking about, oh, I'm over here doing me? What does it take a week? They're over there getting beat up by two or three guys because they did something wrong.
Right. Man, it's powerful, man. This movie is crazy because it's a time period type movie. Ain't much change. Whether it's how the COs was behaving, whether it's how the inmates was behaving, the only thing that changed was what was being moved around. You know what I'm saying? But the evil machinations was still going on. You know what I'm saying? The psychological warfare was still going on. The internal corruption was still going on. And what that can do to a person's perspective on life. and you just told a powerful story on your transformation. And like, what would you? I don't want to say what would you tell somebody that before they get to prison, but for somebody that's in there listening to you right now, what would you tell them that's in the midst of it right now?
Two things. Always love yourself, no matter what you go through,
Mm,
because your hope stems from love. As long as you have great self-worth, what can be done to you? Unless it's physical, it can't do nothing to you, right? As long as you have that self-worth. And the other thing is education. No matter what it is, read it.
mm,
Read it. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's Mein Kampf by Hitler, if it's a Buddha book, uh, if it's some, if it's a book by Joseph Stiglitz and it's some hardcore economics. Read it. Try to understand it. And
right.
if there's something in the book you agree with or you don't agree with, you do what I used to do. You go to the back to the bibliography. You see where they get their information from, and you go and find one of those books, and you read that book, and you see this is how they came to their understanding. I still don't understand it. Okay, where did this person get their books from? Where did they get their? And you always trace it back. Always trace it back, because something people I think forget is books are a way of conveying knowledge, but they're written by people that won the fight. Essentially,
Mm.
it's his story. You have to educate yourself. You have to in some way.
And what else you got going on out there right now for people that don't know? Like, what's your aspirations? What you chasing right now?
So right now, I just re-enrolled in college at Sacramento State in the water treatment operators program. Thankfully, I got a guy that's going to mentor me, and
Right.
he's all for it. He's another brother, and he's the only brother, Deveris. He's the only black man that has ever been a water treatment operator at the plants in Fairfield, California.
Yeah, that's powerful.
That's powerful. And he's been there like 7 years, and he's going to mentor me on that. And of course, I got the clothing store with my daughter's mom, Triple H Clothing in Fairfield, California. We do all the customs, and so I got those two things. Um, and as always, daddy daycare. Just trying to be a
Absolutely.
positive influence in my daughter's life,
Right.
and I'm there. I
Right.
drive from, I leave my house at 5 o'clock in the morning. I go to work. I work about 20 miles away. I drive from there to my daughter's mom's area. That's about 25 miles away. I leave her house. I make my daughter dinner, put her down, shower, all that. I get home at 11 o'clock at night, wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and do it all over.
Y'all just heard Michael Mosley's story as it relates to Shawshank Redemption, in more ways than one. And I'm pretty sure there's more movies that can relate in different aspects of his life. That's not what this is about. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure that the screenwriters wasn't thinking about him when they wrote this movie. They wasn't thinking about me when they wrote this movie. But it's always a movie out there, a situation that a character was going through that somebody can tie their life into. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times these movies is just a opener. You know what I'm saying? It allows you to reflect and be able to connect the dots on your life that you couldn't do that before. You know what I'm saying? So as he's telling his story, it's happening the same with a lot of viewers out there. As he's telling his life, boom, it's allowing y'all to reflect and connect the dots to y'all's story as you hear him tell his. So, but this was a powerful conversation, and I appreciate you for coming on. Till next time.
Absolutely.